So our session today will introduce the developments and actions of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity vulnerabilities that are associated with developing such technology. And for the discussion, we have two of the most esteemed experts on artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. We have Professor Tarek Saadawi, who is an expert in cybersecurity and network security. He is a co-founder and co-director of the City University of New York City College's Cybersecurity Master's Program, and also directs the City College Center for Information Networking and Telecommunications. Dr. Saadawi has been invited and joined the US Department of Commerce delegation to the government of Algeria to address rural communications. He also led a group of US experts to provide a telecommunication master plan for the government of Egypt under USAID funding. We are also pleased to have Dr. Najwa Aaraj, who is a chief researcher at the Cryptography Research Center and Autonomous Robotics Center at Technology Innovation Institute, United Arab Emirates. Dr. Aaraj earned a PhD with the highest distinction from Princeton University. Her expertise is in applied cryptography, trusted platforms, security architecture for embedded systems, software exploit detection and prevention systems, and biometrics. Previously, she was senior vice president at Dark Matter, a cybersecurity leader based in the UAE. I would like to start with a question to you, Professor Tarek. The Middle Eastern states are actually facing significant traditional cybersecurity threats, including ransomware, fraud, hacktivism. And these threats, they target individuals, organizations, corporations, and also states. More specifically, the Gulf states, they are targeted by what we call the advanced persistent threats, mainly from Iran. This is what we call the state-sponsored intrusion campaigns. In your opinion, what is the most threat facing cybersecurity, and what's needed to mitigate the effect of their impact?
First of all, sorry. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ibtisam for inviting us and the organizing of this really very good conference covering different aspects. Definitely, cybersecurity is a major issue now. It addresses different aspects in terms of your national security, that's number one, but it affects us everywhere. So individuals as users of the internet and digital technology and all that, we get infected. And as a result, we get attacked by viruses, and viruses could have different kind. I mean, could be worms, it could be virus, it could be Trojan horse, it could be ransomware. So there are different types of attacks, and definitely they represent like a big hurdle to us. So that's from us as individual. But as corporation, as government, we suffer obviously from attacks either for cyber criminal or state actors. So that means one country against another country. Well, the country doesn't do the bad job. She gets a third party, state actor, to do the job for itself. And that's happened between all the major countries. This is very common between them. US does it, China, Russia, South Korea, North Korea, and you name it. So then, for example, I mean, one famous story is Stuxnet. Stuxnet happened in 2009. And in that, obviously, the attack, George Bush gave the go-ahead for the plan with the Israelis, and Obama signed for it, and they decided to go and do the attack. It was done well from the technical point of view, but they forgot one thing, or one thing was not added, which is the suicide software module. So it allowed to erase the whole attack once they execute the job. So as a result, the Iranian, 2 years later, counterattack financial banks, and this been going back and forth between the two. So clearly, cybersecurity is a major issue now, and we see another effect for it between Russia and Ukraine that has been happening very much. It happened 2015. The Ukrainian electric grid was attacked. 2016 was attacked again, and they cut off the electricity for like 4 hours from Kiev. So that's been going on for a while. If we also want to bring smaller countries like Estonia. Estonia was actually the first country that suffered a cyber attack. And in 2010, around that time, there have been hackers, and they end up disconnecting the whole Estonia from the other European countries. And as a result, Estonia was prevented from doing anything for almost a couple of days. And then they were able to mitigate that effect. And then after that, actually, in US, we happened to invite the defense minister of Estonia in our technical conferences, because clearly their experience has been very valuable and talked about. So that's more an overview for what is the status in terms of attacks back and forth between different countries. And I can go describe many cases of attack, but just, that's
excellent. Thank
for
you,
the time
Professor
being.
Tarek. Thank you very much. I move to Dr. Najwa, and Dr. Najwa, artificial intelligence is arguably there to, or used to enhance cybersecurity and for deterrence as well. Can you talk to us a bit about the importance of artificial intelligence in cyber reasoning and the automation vulnerability management and also incident response?
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Ibtisam for having me here. Second of all, I would like to apologize for my voice. I lost my voice this morning, so please bear with me. So you mentioned, Bassant, the concept of cyber reasoning and automation of vulnerability management and incident response. Cyber reasoning basically is a way to automate defense and prevention against cyber attacks. The term came into bear in 2016 when DARPA launched the Grand Challenge, where they tried to basically do automation at machine speed of the detection of a vulnerability, and at the same time to come up with the measure in order to patch a vulnerability and then eventually to do prevention and automate the incident response there. So when we talk about automation, a direct implication is artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'll take a pause and to take a step back. Today, you see attacks that have been repeating themselves over and over again, and this is because the approach to cybersecurity, the approach to detection of viruses or to exploits of vulnerabilities has been static. So you've seen approaches that are either based on signatures, signature matching, and we know that by just having like a small modification in a binary on a code, the signatures will not match anymore, even though you have the same behavior, or they have been policy-based, or they have been heuristic-based, and this is not sufficient. And this is where we start introducing artificial intelligence and machine learning in the concept of vulnerability management and incident response. Now, AI and ML could come either in the form of supervised learning, and this has proven to be effective both in offline training of the machine to develop or to generate a model that captures the behavior of a specific program. And this is typically done offline, and then specific expression that is learned by the machine can be deployed at runtime, so that when you have either a program that is being exploited or a virus running at real time, you extract the behavior. The behavior is taken as an input in the machine, and the output can tell you either whether there is a vulnerability or not. Or you can even go to the extent of trying to use NLPs or transformers in this domain. Today, there are plenty of vulnerability databases like CVEs, OWASP, the MITRE databases, where if we think about them in a way where we try to mimic a human mind in understanding what a CVE implies, we have this NLP and transformers that try to abstract this vulnerability at a more upper level. I can match it to a new vulnerabilities. And this is where 0 days also can become tackleable in a specific way.
Okay, a follow-up on that. what is the main focus of the race to develop artificial intelligence, and how are the states in the MENA region doing to achieve actually this goal?
Sure. So if I'm talking about AI in a theoretical way, of course, you have the whole development of AI algorithms, starting from the most basic ones like support vector machines, decision trees, KNNs, etc., moving into neural networks, whether we're talking about CNNs, RNNs, DNNs, etc., moving into, and this is what usually classifies as supervised machine learning. Then we start with reinforcement learning and unsupervised machine learning. Lately, we all are hearing about generative AI and GAN networks or generative adversarial networks as well. So this is more from a theoretical perspective, but the end goal basically is to enable multiple applications, right? So today you see a lot of domains where AI is super relevant. One of the domains actually two of the domains which I deeply work in, one is autonomous systems and robotics, and you can imagine the importance of AI and machine learning in autonomous systems. So whether I'm talking about perception and computer vision, whether I'm talking about the whole localization and manipulation techniques, control, and this is usually done either using deep neural networks or reinforcement learning for state estimation, or any other decision making that has to happen on the robot, in the air, on the land, or on the sea. This is where AI has a very big application. So at the end, this is the actual brain on the robot. We mentioned AI application in the cybersecurity space. Just maybe to take a note that is additional to what I mentioned before in the domain of cyber reasoning, automation of vulnerability management. Also, AI has a very big role when it comes to breaking cryptographic schemes. So whether we're talking about practical attacks or side channel attacks on crypto systems, or we're even talking about finding or automation of theoretical cryptanalytic attacks on crypto systems. And then, of course, you're developing AI for other sectors. Precision agriculture was mentioned before. In the biotech domain, AI is becoming very important. Basically, anywhere where you have data processing and then learning from data processing, federating network, healthcare, etc., this is becoming very important.
Professor Tarek, with the increasing cyber threats that are increasing exponentially, states in the Middle East are developing their cybersecurity capabilities, and they started to issue or develop their own national legislation, strategies, engage or cooperate with other countries in cybersecurity regionally and internationally, and so on. What actions should be taken domestically? And would you say that the existing cybersecurity framework on the national level is adequate actually to counter such threats and ensure data protection, combat cyber crimes, and actually secure transactions?
Actually, probably what I will say on cybersecurity will fit also within AI, but basically two main things. Number one, we depend on intellectual people in human capital. That's number one issue in these type of things. For example, in AI, there is many institution now offers AI as a graduate degree. You can go, for example, MIT, its computing school, has a certificate in AI. So there are few courses, 5, 6, 7 courses in AI. We offer a master degree in cybersecurity. So definitely there is a trend in education to catch up on those ideas. So that's number one. Number two is the environment of AI and cybersecurity, as well as the digital accessibility to everyone. So that means, for example, there is enough capital to fund different companies in cybersecurity and AI. This will help definitely to, and actually there is a lot of companies in the last 5, 6 years in the United States that basically do cybersecurity, mainly because of the existing of venture capitalists and that helps, number one. Number two, you really need to have infrastructure for patents. Patents is a must, is needed, and you need to have, I mean, we applied for patents, and it's a long process. It takes a lot of effort and reviewers to come back with questions to clarify. So basically, number two is that do we have enough patents to allow those type of things to grow? Number three is number of IT companies. The more you have, definitely will be provide, because the workers, software engineers or IT engineers or whatever, those eventually will work in AI and cybersecurity. So all what you need is a little bit of training, and they can go to those two fields. So that's now the last item in the second issue, which is basically the infrastructure, is you want to look at the amount of data. This is a must, obviously, in AI. Data mining is a term used in AI. So the more data you have for a specific applications, the more accurate your AI. Give you one simple example. For example, stock market. I'm trying to get IBM stock now is $100. Next 5 minutes, it will be 105, it will be 95. So there is a probability it might go up, might go down. So we do a lot of statistical analysis for this type of. AI can do that, but it has, on top of that, it can do sort of feedback in terms of the data, because you're collecting data and you're feeding it to the AI, so the AI is able to come up with better prediction. So the bottom line in AI is big data, and as a matter of fact, is a new field coming out now, which is data science. We have a master in data science. Most of the universities does have that now, because that's needed in AI. All right? So give you one example. Tesla, number one company started in electric cars. That's one advantage. But actually Tesla, the main advantage is a lot of information, a lot of data. It gets continuously, so now it has massive data that will help us to develop more AI in their cars in the future. Another example, there was a drug company that issued a drug based on AI. And they had for that, I think they had like close to 50 million data points. They're feeding it to AI, and it's able to come back with whatever is needed. So the bottom line, yes, AI and cybersecurity is on new fields, and we have to move quickly in these aspects.
Thank you very much. And now let's move to the international level. And Dr. Najwa, what are the countries in the international community doing in order to enhance their security against the risks of artificial intelligence and cyber warfare, while at the same time pushing to lead the technological race?
Yeah, I'd like to think about it as, the triangle of processes, policies, people, and technology. So let me maybe start with the policies and processes perspective. So today you see more and more investment that is coming from the governments themselves into the concepts of zero trust, into the concepts of securing all the IoT networks, cyber physical systems. You see more and more talks about the quantum network, about post-quantum cryptography to thwart the threat of quantum computers that are expected, even though they are expected, let's say, in 20 or 30 years, but because of the criticality of the data, when we talk about government-level cybersecurity, you see lots of memorandums in various countries that are coming up. Of course, a lot of countries, including the UAE, have put together their national cyber assurance and cybersecurity frameworks, and you see more and more laws that are coming up in relation to cybersecurity, cryptography, blockchain, cloud computing and cloud security in general, and federated learning. So this is more from a policy and processes perspective. Now, on the people level, Professor Tarek mentioned about all of the, let's say, the academic degrees that are happening in various universities in the US. The same here in multiple universities. We also have a university that is dedicated to AI, Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI, and lots of programs that are coming up that are specialized, cybersecurity, cryptography, and AI. In addition to that, there is a lot of awareness awareness campaigns that have to come, where there must be more awareness and education when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to AI, in particular preparing the people and making them aware of the threats of artificial intelligence, the way that, the way that GAN networks can synthesize data and launch attacks. This is basically, as computational power, as quantum computers become available, this will be tools in the hands of the attacker to launch more and more powerful attacks. In the same token, this is where we talk about cyber wargaming when it comes to nation-state attack and other people-related aspects. Now, on the technology level, there are two aspects. One is looking into what technologies are missing from the market today, what are the technologies that are needed in order to fill specific gaps, and I would qualify things like cyber reasoning or AI-based vulnerability management systems, intrusion detection, network management systems along the same line. But more importantly, there should be a readiness to look into what are the technological trends of the future. I mentioned, for example, one of the main technologies that most governments today are preparing for is quantum computers. And along with quantum when you have let's say crypto-enabled or AI-enabled quantum computers, this is where AI will become even more powerful because of the whole computational power that will be relevant. So the quantum computers, with the quantum algorithms that we will be able to implement on top of them, they will be able to break cryptography. What we know today as public key cryptography will be able to be broken, and then other attacks can be mounted using this computational power. And governments have to prepare for this, starting from reinforcing the old crypto infrastructure that is being used today, that will become sort of deprecated because of those attacks. This has to be recovered in addition to other technologies to thwart the attack of the future.
Okay, interesting tech insights into this. So as Professor Tarek, as the Middle Eastern states are actually achieving breakthroughs in terms of the technology and in the technological race and the competition regionally and internationally, and having the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and even Bahrain on top of this race, how has the technological competition or race is actually threatening or changing the new world order?
Definitely both AI and cybersecurity is becoming strategic. In other words, there is so many technology, but those two specifically is strategic technology, because cybersecurity, for example, is becoming part of the national security. It's becoming of today's and future wars is going to happen in cybersecurity. So definitely, and AI obviously is getting into all the military using AI. AI is getting so much now. Actually, maybe something on the side, AI has a lot of benefit across all disciplines, but it might have a drawback. Not drawback, but it might have some negative side, that misinformation. So misinformation is actually, there is a lot of techniques where people, was a known story in the United States where FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, FCC, basically puts requests to the public and companies and everybody about net neutrality. And they receive feedback, and based on that, they modify the program or modify the new rules. Well, what happened is somebody used AI to produce 20,000, 30,000 responses automated. So that's misinformation. How we can prevent that? That's very bad. In California, there is a leading company, not startup company, called, I think, Stability AI. This company made AI open source and no restriction. So as a result, you can provide it words and they produce images to you. So that can be used and misused actually in terms of racist images and all that, and actually there is a case about that. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, AI is great, but then we must have regulations. Regulation is a must. We must have the government and the private sector has to get involved together so that they can reach a minimum ground to guarantee safety, privacy, all these issues, by the way, existing in cybersecurity and existing in AI, very common. So that's really a key thing we can do on a domestic level.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let's move the talk to international cybersecurity governance. Okay, and we have a problem with states, specifically from the Middle East, discussing the applicability of international law on armed conflict to cybersecurity and the usage of the autonomous weapons systems. So, Professor Tarek, how can states on the regional and international level cooperate to enhance a safe working environment regarding the internet, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity? And do you believe that there is a room for a common or unified cybersecurity framework regionally in the Middle East?
That's a very important point. As a matter of fact, in 2015, I wrote a paper in Georgetown Journal of International Affairs. And that was titled, the paper, Securing Telecommunication Infrastructure Against Cyber Attack. I concluded, but definitely there is a lot of other similar talks been thrown out, but basically we must reach a minimum agreement between the countries how to deal with cybersecurity. That's a basic requirement. I make an analogy with the Nuclear Disarmament Act. Yes, this is different, but it can damage our infrastructure, every country infrastructure, financial institution, telecom, any sector. As a matter of fact, Department of Homeland Security in the United States defined what are the critical infrastructure, critical cyber infrastructure. And they defined 29 critical cyber infrastructure in the United States. Telecom, financial, movie industry, you name it. So literally across the board. So definitely we have to start looking at international cooperation because one person or a group of persons in one country can attack another country. So how you gonna work that out? The US has an agreement between country to country. There is what is called CERT, which is Computer Emergency and Response Team, CERT. That's a major organization in the United States, but it made with different countries similar CERT. So now this country one-to-one, and there is a lot of cooperation going on. I visited one of them in the Middle East. So clearly, how we can reach between the countries, that's clearly is a big issue.
Yeah, it's certainly important to see more engagement from the countries in the Middle East in the international cybersecurity governments, engaging in talks about the applicability of international law to cybersecurity, and by, for example, engaging more in the discussions of the United Nations Group of Government Experts and the Open-Ended Working Group on Cybersecurity. I would like to have your final thoughts on what do you predict is the course of action to be moving forward regarding the cybersecurity actions in the Middle East. from both of you.
Sure. Maybe just one point also to what Professor Tarek was saying. I think it's very important for whether we're talking about governments in the Middle East or international communities. I think one thing we didn't mention is information sharing. We implied it a lot, but information sharing enabled by privacy protocols and federated learning is very important when it comes to cybersecurity. Threat feeds, I mean, at the end, all of these threats are not they have a local flavor, but they're not localized. So it is very important to have an information governance framework and setup where information sharing between government, between organizations, and then threat feeds, they circulate and they flow easily between governments, very important. Also, open standards and the participation of local governments in setting up the standards, whether we're talking about the technical standards when it comes to cybersecurity, especially now you have various routes when it comes to that. You have network security, you have cloud security that needs to have its own security considerations, IoT systems, and anything that classifies under the energy-constrained devices also is very important to have standards for those. Standards when it comes to cryptography. Cryptography in the threat of new technologies such as quantum is very important. So our participation and our contribution to that becomes very important. We addressed the policy and the laws aspect before, and then the cybersecurity framework also is something very important to have. And what is also important to have is to have compliance mechanisms that are imposed in order to make sure that these policies, frameworks, and laws come into effect is very important.
Thank you. Professor Tarek.
Probably I will add to what Dr. Najwa has just highlighted. Information sharing, that's the key word in cybersecurity nowadays, information sharing. Maybe 10 years ago, company used to be hacked, the company used to keep it quiet for itself. That's not true anymore. No one you can do with this. So a key thing, you have to share information, and actually in New York City, for example, they made a task force, university, I'm represented in it, maybe all the major financial institution and the city government. So this is the task force, they made it, we meet every 3 months to do information sharing. We have actually site developed by Verizon site, that any new attack, they put the characteristic on that site. So by this way, immediately you can allow to share that information. So the key point to emphasize here is information sharing. One thing I mentioned is maybe ransomware, which again, ransomware is a major thing actually the law enforcement keep emphasizing. It is probably #1 threat, at least for the commercial world. And this has happened to cities in the United States. They have their own offices. Small city doesn't have full cybersecurity staff. So they were hacked and they were ransomed. Ransom basically frees their server and asks them to pay. And one city government paid $500,000. So definitely ransomware is growing. And also the other case of Colonial Pipeline. This is a major supplier, oil supplier in Texas. The whole East Coast, they ransomware their servers, they stopped their operation, and that caused literally southeast of the United States, all of it was paralyzed for a few days. So that tells you it is becoming so common now, and the key thing is information sharing.
Thank you very much for your insights and valuable comments on the status of cybersecurity in the Middle East and the level we reach in terms of the technological development and where we are regarding the race in the region and also internationally. I believe we still have...
There is one question from Dr. Hani Fanda.
Yeah.
Hello.
Dr. Haig.
Thank you very much for this very good discussion. And my question really is addressed to both Dr. Tarek and Dr. Najwa. In my early years, younger years, I studied artificial intelligence when it was at its infancy with people like John McCarthy and Marvin Minsky. And our idea at the time was to create, to try to replicate human brain function in an artificial way in a computer. It looks to me like artificial intelligence has evolved in a very different way today than it had been initially planned for. So my question is that, is this the direction it's going to continue to take, or will, for example, things like quantum computing and other technologies will change the direction it takes? And number two, to the extent that we're talking about intelligence or replicating intelligence, is there a cultural component to it, and to the extent that, for example, the United States and China lead developments of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, will the Arab world be able to have its own version of it, or does it make a difference?
Thank you, Dr. Hani. Would you like to respond first?
Yeah,
Dr. Najwa,
maybe to address the two questions. So on the first question that you had about before, basically the direction of AI moving towards brain-inspired computing and sparse brain-inspired computing. So for me, there is a separation between artificial intelligence and machine learning and what is evolving today as cognitive computing and spiking neural networks. So there is today a big effort that's happening in the US. It's called CBRIC. It's led by Purdue University, where they're trying to revive the efforts of cognitive computing and then having neural networks that are not instigated by the discrete input, rather by spikes in order to mimic the human brain and have it like to be less computationally intensive so that you can put it on any machine or any system in order to provide you as close as possible with the brain functionality. So at least from my perspective, these are two different concepts. Of course, we had to go through the phase of developing machine learning, deep neural networks, trying to mimic the neurons, etc., in order to land and have the analog logic that will enable you to mimic brain-inspired computing. The same question, I will just take it from the perspective of what we are trying to do here in the country, in the United Arab Emirates. So as of 3 years ago, we have opened the Technology Innovation Institute because from our perspective, basically research and learning can be anywhere in the world. So it's not, a lot of countries, they have a technology lead on many, because of historical reasons, but I do believe that technology, research, and science can be replicated and even advanced further in every country. So today, at the institute where we have a very big unit on artificial intelligence. We're also working on brain-inspired computing and advancing the state of spiking neural networks. At the same time, we have also the Quantum Center where we are trying to develop, or actually not trying, but we are developing a quantum computer, superconducting-based quantum computer. Of course, other countries have a lead time, but I believe with having the right scientific mindset, the right resources, and the right investment, you can catch up and even have like more advanced technological breakthroughs.
Dr. Tarek, you want to respond?
Probably the second question is interesting because you mentioned China and US, and then how we can imply that to the Arab world. China announced, I guess, 2025 plan. They have defined exactly what they expect from the technology, but also in US, I guess the White House issued what are the major thrust of technology in the coming, 5 years or whatever, and they defined 5 technology, or 6 maybe. AI is one of them, cybersecurity, quantum computing, semiconductor, of course. Actually, Biden just opened a factory in Ohio Then he opened another center for semiconductor with IBM in New York. So that's according to the plan. So those 4 technology, AI, cybersecurity, quantum computing is a key. And not only in terms of cybersecurity, because the encryption algorithm today are the sophisticated encryption algorithm cannot be broken. It takes maybe from a supercomputer, let's say a year to break it. So that's impossible nowadays. However, with supercomputing, you can do that almost 1,000 faster. So that means this is the next level of competition between the 2 nations. These are key to this aspect. Now, to transfer to the Arab world, clearly, at least in Dubai, I have my daughter working in Dubai, and I visit her every year, and I know her friends. They all the young generations are entrepreneurs. I tell you that. This is very clear. And the environment here helps them to grow. There is no question about that. But in terms I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, you need capital. And obviously, Emirat is putting, the investment authority is putting like $100 million or something like that, a huge number to allow to help those companies get off the ground. Saudi Arabia is doing similar things. So yes, there are activities, very good activities. In terms of cybersecurity, the program I mentioned about CERT, they do have equivalent in every country here, and they will meet regularly. I know that. They meet with each other. They have, I guess, a council of, I don't know what is it called exactly, but they do. So there is actually very good activity going in the Middle East and the Gulf states.
Thank you. I think we have a question from Patrick Bell.
Yes, thank you for the interesting presentation. I guess I have a question for both panelists. It regards, I guess what Dr. Nawaz talked about, that you have technology, people, policies, and processes. I want to focus on the processes, in particular, the process of integration, and how you'll have integrating 2 emerging technologies, whether it's quantum and AI, and in particular, the synergistic effect. And the question I have for either of you is, from a policy standpoint, what do you think are the factors impacting the adoption of post-quantum cryptography in the UAE? And in particular, if you look at what the United States has done in July of this year, they just, NIST, the National Institute of Standard Technology, announced their first 4 candidates for post-quantum cryptography. So I'd ask you to comment on both of those issues, the factors, and also what are the processes that you think need to be improved that will allow the UAE to become a leader, as you said, in, shall we say, the post-quantum cryptographic world?
Dr. Najwa, in 1 minute, because we are approaching the end of the session. So
Yes, sure. I'll make it very quick. So let me take the second part of your question, because this is what I do on my daily basis, actually. So yeah, as you mentioned, this that standardize Kyber for encryption and then 3-digital signature algorithms, and now they opened also another call for digital signatures and post-quantum. There was the memorandum that was issued by the White House. The same thing happened in Germany by the BSI, in France by INRIA, etc. In fact, here in the UAE, because we have been one of the main entities that has been working on cryptography in the country, both on the sovereign crypto library and the post-quantum crypto library, we have started our post-quantum efforts since 2016. We have a developed software library in post-quantum that is developed in parallel with the NIST efforts. So we started almost when they were at round 1, round 2, and we followed the progress. And of course, as the finalists have been announced, we have refined what we have. We have also developed crypto accelerators for specific algorithms. Now, to me, when I'm asked, because I'm more on the applied crypto side, this is all great. I mean, this whole international effort, it has been under scrutiny from the best cryptographers of the world. The main issue to me is what you mentioned, is this migration, right? And if you know of the Mosca theorem, basically they ask you, why are you worrying about it? Because a crypto-enabled quantum computer where you need tens of thousands of logical qubits, which is millions of qubits, will not be able to run sure, right? So the fact is, we're talking about government information, and government information gets stored for 15 to 20 years. So here what I'm protecting against is this concept of store now, decrypt later, or harness now and decrypt later. So then if you think about it in those terms, migration has to start now. So this migration, or the crypto engineering aspect, is the main challenging thing, not only in the UAE, but globally. One thing we have developed at a global level is what we call the unified crypto framework, which is, one, you need to have an inventory of your crypto assets. Then crypto agility will be key. And then to start moving, taking into consideration interoperability in place, and also by prioritizing your crypto assets will be very important. So this is, I know I need to be brief, but this is all to say this is an effort that the country has been one of the leading entities when it comes, or leading countries when it comes to post-quantum cryptography, not only from the development perspective, but also from a migration perspective, and putting this crypto agility framework in place.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we reached the end of the session. I would like to thank Professor Tarek Saadawi and Dr. Najwa Aaraj for their comments and expertise, sharing their expertise with us in this final session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.